Kick us off. I was boring people this morning with the fact that I first learned about blockchain gaming 4 years ago, minus a month, probably in this room. And we have a few people this afternoon who were there, who were actually on stage, and one of them is coming up now, Gary Bracey. Come on, Gary. So Gary and my colleague Brian are going to have a fireside chat. So Gary has all the stories about games. He's been around a long time. Those 4 years ago, I remember you sort of talking rather nervously about sort of entering the blockchain, and I guess in the fireside chat we'll go into your progression since then with Terra Virtua, which has been pretty successful in launching NFTs. We're going to have a bit of Metaverse, I think, Brian. You're going to get some in? Yeah?
Metaverse, blockchain,
Good.
NFTs, the whole bit, the whole future in 20 minutes.
Good. Well, I will leave it to you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. We know that there are many other things that you could be doing, not only in the event, but central London, so we appreciate you being here. But you made the wise choice because this is going to be authoritative, argumentative, and definitive. And we are going to cover the entire future of the game sector. But first of all, Gary, would you introduce yourself to our lovely audience and tell them who you are, why you're here today?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. My name is Gary Bracey. I'm currently chairman of a company and co-founder of Terra Virtua. We started... Is that on? Yeah. We started about, almost 5 years ago with the concept of bringing the metaverse to the mainstream. And now everyone's talking about the metaverse, and people think we're just jumping on the bandwagon, but we've been involved in building out this for quite some years. I remember John mentioned one of the early talks where I came along. I was asked to join a panel about blockchain, and I was there with some quite authoritative figures who'd been in cryptocurrency for quite some time, knew everything. And then I remember it was either John or whoever was moderating turned to me and said, "Can you define blockchain in one sentence or one paragraph?" And I just lost it. I looked blankly. I think I'd still struggle to do it. But at the time I was still learning, so it was a horrible experience. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So yeah, my background is video games. I've been in video games since the early 80s with a company called Ocean Software, and been through all the transition of all the different hardware platforms, from obviously home computers, the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, through to the 8-bit Nintendo, the console revolution, the first PlayStations, mobile games, Game Boy, right up to the present. And latterly I was more directly involved in developing some mobile games as well for Guju Entertainment. I met up with my co-founder, Jawad Ashraf, almost 5 years ago in a car park in Staines to discuss VR publishing. But we started brainstorming, and we'd seen these things called NFTs, and we were quite interested in blockchain and ICOs, and we just started brainstorming and thinking there's something here that's perhaps worth investigating. And we went forward and created Terra Virtua, and we've spent the past 4 years building a platform, building a marketplace with the express intention of bringing in the mainstream. Because as we all know, there's a lot of disinformation out there at the moment about NFTs generally, about blockchain generally, and certainly about the metaverse. So it's quite nice now that everything's catching up, and hopefully we're in the right place at the right time.
Fantastic. A marvellous summary. I shouldn't have had that second taco at lunchtime. So what we're here to do today is talk about the future of the metaverse, NFTs and blockchain. So we're going to take it as read that it's coming, that it's happening. But I guess I just want to touch on the controversy for a moment, because like Gary, I've been doing this for a long time, not quite as long. I joined the studio DMA Design in Dundee back in sort of the mid-90s. But the one constant throughout the whole of the games industry has been change. You know, everything is constantly being pushed forward by new technologies, new platforms, devices, but also routes to market, business models. And I think it's fair to say the games industry has not necessarily been the most welcoming and first to embrace these new technologies. So do you think the backlash against the NFT, blockchain, and to a lesser degree, the metaverse, is just business as usual?
Yeah, I think there's a sort of cynicism, and tempered with a degree of arrogance, I think, with the games industry. We went through a situation probably 5 years ago when we were just getting into this, and everyone was talking about VR. And VR was going to be the next big thing, and everyone was going to have VR headsets, and VR would be adopted by everybody. And we bought into that a little bit because we started developing our platform, our NFT platform, in VR. VR was released, but it didn't achieve the heady heights that everyone was hoping for. And when I say everyone, I mean our industry. And there is that arrogance that we determine what will be the next greatest thing. And it doesn't necessarily happen, because what will drive that adoption is compelling content. We've got to get the user on board. And the best example I can give of the other way around is Fortnite. And I mean, obviously, I've been in the business for a long time. I know a lot of people, and I was having a good chat with the guys at Epic. And Fortnite was originally designed as a sort of an experiment. They were messing around and wanted to make this game. They had this idea. They did not conceive in any way that it will be the cultural phenomenon that it became. And I think those real big successes, and you could argue that Fortnite was actually a metaverse in a way, but those successes are driven by the users coming forth. Wordle's another great, more recent example.
Perfect example.
Yeah. And I think you can't contrive that. The guy who came up with Wordle never for a moment considered that's what would happen. SMS was another thing. It was done as an experiment, but people graduated to it. People embraced it. And I think, going back to that arrogance thing, and we had a little chat about this, Brian and I, a while ago, the games industry believes, and I'm as guilty as anyone else, that we can compel these trends. And they're very, very difficult to control. All we have to do, or what we have to do, absolutely, is create the right content and listen to people and figure out what they want. And they don't want complexity. They want simplicity. And that's why, you know, all of these super casual, hyper casual games are doing so well at the moment. And so Metaverse will come, absolutely. I have no doubt about it. When is the big question? You know, is it going to be in 6 months? Probably not. There are certainly a lot of technical issues that have to be addressed before then, but also it's all going to, we all know, I'm not telling you something you don't know, but it all has to be driven by the content. And what you guys are doing is going to determine whether adoption will be fast, will be slow. We're playing our part. We're trying to create compelling content. We're creating what we believe is innovative, what we believe is pioneering. I'm saying we as Terra Virtua. And hopefully we'll get something right. But there are no guarantees. There's no formula. And going back, the best analogy I can give is going back to the very, very, very early days of video games when they were made of wood. We didn't really have a grasp of what people wanted to play. You know, every new game was just an experiment because there was no precedent. There wasn't this collection of games that we could look upon and say, okay, people love racing games, people love shoot-em-ups, people love puzzle games, whatever it was. We were just making up what we could, what we liked to play, and hopefully that would resonate with the mass market. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. We're in that situation now, and I think, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit preachy, but the biggest mistake...
Testify.
The biggest mistake we can make, and I think I've got a good analogy here as well, is to just improve on what's been done before. And the best example I can give you is mobile phone games. And when the touchscreen phone came out, that was massively embraced by the games community. And the first games that were developed and released were variations of games that already existed on PC or console or whatever. And if you remember, they replicated a joystick on screen. So to control the game or the character, you moved the on-screen joystick. It didn't take off. Let's
be honest, it sucked.
It was, yeah, I was going to say something worse than that. And it was only when the likes of Angry Birds and Candy Crush came out with the swipe and the touch and everything else that Mobile games just rocketed. They found their niche. And that was because they used the technology that was available to them. And I think the mistake that can be made with the metaverse, potentially, is just adapting what already exists and planting it into this whole new digital canvas or landscape, and thinking that's good enough. And people like playing that sort of game, so they'll play it in the metaverse. No, we've got to look at this whole new canvas as a whole new thing, and we have to be pioneering and innovative, and that's why we're all in this business, surely, because the creative possibilities are amazing, and we literally do have a blank canvas, and it's all. Again, there's no precedent. You're making it up as you go along, and no one can say you're wrong, because time will tell whether you are or not. Great opportunity.
I'm going to interrupt you because I feel like I'm just not doing my job properly if I don't. I want to pick up on one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and you mentioned VR, and the fact that VR was kind of hyped as everybody's going to have a headset, it's going to be in every house, it's going to be the next way that we interact with things, and it very clearly wasn't. VR is not a mass market product, it is a very niche product for certain use cases. And so I want to ask your feelings about NFTs and blockchain in the same kind of context. Is it something that is going to be in every game, or is it something that's only going to exist where there is a need for it?
It's got to be, yeah, it's a perfect question. It's got to be born out of necessity. Once you start shoehorning any sort of mechanic because it feels right, rather than it being more organic and natural, then I don't think that's the way to go. It's got to be natural. So the NFT element has got to fit. I mean, people are talking about play to earn, people are talking about NFTs all in games, and there's absolutely a place for all of these, but is it a mix of those? Does it mean that games that don't have either of those elements or others shouldn't exist in the metaverse? No, but don't shoehorn something in because it's cool to have or because it's the latest craze. It's what will drive your revenues, obviously, is adoption, and adoption will be organic. People have got to embrace what you're creating, and don't try and compromise the beauty of what you're creating by trying to include something that you feel should be included, or some of the higher-ups or management believe should be included because it's the latest craze. You've got to do the right thing.
I'm just conscious of time, and sorry. I'm going to keep thinking, no, this is great. I am feeling like I have nothing better. Go. But to pick up on that again, one of your former points was the games industry can be somewhat insular. And so, as Terra Virtua, how are you seeing the demand coming in from other areas of the creative industries? Are they looking at this? Are they looking at games to pioneer? And outside, dodgy chimp NFTs, are we starting to see a growing recognition of their value across the rest of our creative world?
I think so. I mean, there was an anecdote about a games company made an announcement recently that they were going into NFT games, and there was a huge backlash from the development community, and that's born mostly, I think, out of disinformation. We're killing the planet, the energy issue and everything else, but of course most decent NFTs now use layer 2 solutions, which are more sustainable, a hell of a lot more sustainable, and don't have that energy impact that Ethereum does. And there is this information that it's an education, and we've got to go through this education process. So don't talk about NFTs. That people have a perception, mostly negative, about NFTs, and I'm not just talking about developers now, I'm talking about the outside public. If I want to buy an NFT, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars. That's because all the publicity has been related to Top Shots and Beeple's $69 million painting. Those do exist, obviously, but the mass market may want to pay $5, $10, $15, $20 and still get a good experience. And that's how we start. But it's got to start with education. And everything, I keep going on about it, but it all needs to be incorporated in an organic way. We recently partnered with a company called Nitro League, and they're doing a race game with these super stylized vehicles, really, really nice. And they're using our marketplace to sell them before the game's released. And we're building utility. It's not just a pretty model. You're going to be able to use these and develop them and use them in a game and hopefully build the value by enhancing your experience points, etc., etc. And that's the organic nature of the metaverse. And then maybe you'll have a driver and the actual race driver, and he does really well, wins a few games, the experience points increase, and then you can use that same character in another game and build on those experience points. And that's where the metaverse really, really comes into its own in a games context.
And I think this is the important thing, is that we're talking about enabling technologies in a lot of cases. You know, so NFTs and blockchain, are they going to become kind of part of the plumbing in the same way that payment providers have, and network cloud gaming has? So it's going to be on a level below the technology, part of the engines. It will be a plugin, an SDK, APK, whatever it happens to be. But do we really know where tomorrow's studios and the developers are going to be able to sort of take this forward in new ways? Are we seeing any kind of really innovative things where you go, oh my God, that's amazing, and it couldn't happen any other way apart from on the blockchain?
That's exactly what's needed. And I'm sure someone out there is doing that, hopefully someone in here. But it hasn't come yet. And we're talking to a number of companies, particularly games companies, and there's so much potential. But I think before we get to that stage, there's a lot more experimentation, and we've got to figure out what works. So it's very difficult to predict. I'd love to be able to say, yeah, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, but you just don't know, because it's got to be looked at in its own way, in its own context. You can't say, well, it's going to develop the same way as console games or mobile games or free-to-play or whatever it is. This is something new, and we don't know how it's going to evolve.
And so that leads very neatly, it's almost like we had this rehearsed, into my next question, which is, so is this something that can be bolted on? When we're talking about NFTs, we're talking about kind of pay to earn, play to earn, is this something that can be added into a game? Or do you have to kind of design from the outset with this in mind?
Yeah, I think personally, and I'm not a definitive view on this, but personally I think it's much like free-to-play games. I remember when free-to-play started becoming really popular, everyone was trying to reverse engineer the mechanic and saying, oh, we were going to sell this game for £5. Now we're going to give it away and we're going to put ads in and we're going to make it free-to-play. But it's a very, very different philosophy in designing the game and the mechanics of how you entice people to keep playing, etc., etc. And I think the same is true here. To reverse engineer anything is going to compromise some elements somehow. So I don't really think, maybe there may be the exception, there always is, but by and large, I think it would be a mistake to try from the outset to reverse engineer what you've already got.
No, that's a very, very good point. And as you say, we've already seen a bit of an issue about some companies that have announced that they're putting NFTs into existing franchises. But kind of flipping it on its head and looking at this from a player perspective, we're at a point in time now where the next billion players who come online and start playing games, they're not coming to console, they're coming to mobile. And it's the hyper casual, it's the small, it's the grazing content for the people who would never pick up a console or buy an Xbox. So is there a place for them in kind of the blockchain future? And if we're talking about a world in which the next billion gamers are on mobile, potentially, cheap Android handsets, are they going to be able to access the metaverse? Or is this still going to be quite an exclusive, club?
It's going to be very democratic. We are currently developing a device-agnostic, high-fidelity, immersive environment based on, Unreal quality graphics, 3D graphics, which will be accessible on any device because it's going to be streamed. I mean, particularly with the advent of 5G and that becoming a lot more ubiquitous, people will have access to that level of technology. So, and with regard to the issue about hyper-casual, they will probably lead the charge. And much like the Candy Crushers and the Angry Birds, I always use those as the examples, sort of fed the casual era of mobile gaming, and then we got a little bit more core gaming games became more popular. I think that's the way we start. So personally, and again, it's only an opinion, but personally I think we get the mainstream, we grab the mainstream by employing casual mechanics in those games, and they can be simple mechanics, racing mechanics or puzzle mechanics or whatever it is. And that way you can then entice them to start, a bit like the Game Boy. The Game Boy was launched on Tetris. I mean, you can't get a simpler game than Tetris. And then look where it ended up. Phenomenon. That's how you get people in. Make it simple. Don't overthink it. And then just build on that.
Now, you see, that's, I think, perfect advice. Keep it simple, stupid. Just should be, you know, mandatory for every game student coming through a games course, wherever they are in the world today. We're very nearly out of time. I have one last question for you, and it's a real doozy. You're going to love this one. So, who's going to lead the charge? Is it going to be one of the existing games companies? Is it going to be one of the tech companies, the existing tech giants? Or do you think we're facing a fast-moving, agile disruptor who we don't know yet, who's currently soaking up VC money like a sponge?
I don't think it's down to money. I really, really don't. I think it's down to creativity, to innovation, and to technical expertise. And combine all those together, and someone's going to come up with the proverbial killer app. It is the killer app that's needed. Where that will come from, I would love it to come from the games industry, but I think it should be, or it more likely will be, a collaboration, because everyone's learning, and there needs to be more communication between maybe the games industry and blockchain companies and crypto companies and NFT companies, and by putting their heads together, which is what we're trying to do, but other companies are as well, collectively we can come up with something that really, really breaks new ground. And that's what you talk about, breaking new ground and bringing something new to the market, to the leisure entertainment market, as an immersive space, rather than just a retread or a slight improvement of what's gone before. As I say, I keep talking about this blank canvas. The metaverse is a blank canvas, and it's up to you guys to come up with something that people will want to try. Maybe a game, may not, may just be some other interactive element.
Perfect. And what a note to leave it on. We are out of time, ladies and gentlemen, so please put your hands together for Mr. Gary Bracey.
Thank you.